Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Sakura was trapped in the infinite Tsukuyomi for 13 years then woke up alone? Part 3. To reaching day 7. Naruto raised his cup of cold tea high. To day 7, Hinata tapped her cup to his with a gentle little clink that she probably had to take a class on when she was a kid. The thought amused Naruto, especially when the girl dug into her ramen with a decidedly unladylike vigor. Still can't believe you like ramen, he mused. I think I always pictured you eating like fancy tuna every day. Hinata shrugged, her pale cheeks going a delicate pink. He'd have to ask old man Tuki to turn the heater up for her. I developed a taste for it a while ago. You even like miso base with extra chashu. He grinned, gesturing at their matching orders. If I'd known we were ramen buddies, I would have taken you out way before this. She snorted, and once again he was struck by how normal the Hyuga princess could be sometimes. This had been an eye-opening week in so many ways. Sasuke. I hope you can take Sasuke-san for ramen soon, too. Hinata said, pulling him out of his thoughts. Us. He corrected her, giving her a huge smile so she'd know he meant it. I want both of us to take Sasuke-kun out for a real excursion one day soon. Sakura and Kakashi-sensei too. Speaking of Sakura and Kakashi-sensei, Hinata's gaze drifted over his shoulder, and she waved. Hello. Naruto twisted in his chair as Sakura and Kakashi slipped into the seats beside them. Sakura-chan. He gave her a quick one-armed hug. The old lady told me everything the other day. I'm so sorry, that sounds horrible. Sakura returned his hug after a small pause. Thanks, Naruto. It's been weird knowing that everyone knows, but at least I don't have to repeat the story 1,000 times. Shisho also said she's informed the other cages and asked them to keep us updated if more people like me start cropping up, so maybe it's good to start talking about it. Was I really the Hokage? She nodded. You hated it, too. No way, he squawked, raking his hands down his whiskered face. Sakura laughed, but Naruto caught the edge of a drop it glare from Kakashi and decided to put a pin in his follow-up questions for now. Anyway, what are you getting? It's my treat. We're celebrating the success of our Sasuke rehabilitation mission. He caught Hinata's eye, who stared at him like he'd just eaten an exploding tag before turning to the others. We were sorry to hear about Obito, by the way, she murmured. Oh, right, sorry. Shit. It's okay, Sakura said, but her smile looked a bit faker than before. I forgive him, and Tsunade's agreed to let him see a mental health counselor, which is probably what he needs more than anything right now. Mental health counseling was still a pretty rare thing in the shinobi world. Ninja were weapons. If they dulled, they were sharpened. If they broke, they were discarded. Before Tsunade, the idea of someone getting counseling even though they were a criminal, someone who would probably never rejoin active service, would have been unthinkable. But it sounded like a wonderful idea, and he said so. I'm getting it too, actually. Sakura's eyes were fixed on her ramen, as if she was revealing this to her boiled egg instead of them. I think that's a wonderful idea too, he said, without hesitation. Hinata nodded vigorously beside him. It's just for a few weeks, so that Shisho can clear me for active duty again. She was still talking to her food, speaking in an uncharacteristically low voice, but Naruto understood the unspoken taboo of admitting such a thing as a shinobi, even if he didn't agree with it. Hinata leaned over him so closely that his elbow was brushing her ribs and her hair was dangerously close to his ramen dregs. She placed her hand on Sakura's, forcing the other girl to look over to her. I got counseling after Neji, she said, her lavender eyes sad and sincere. And the war, and the clan, all of it, it helped. Sakura nodded, mouthed thank you to both of them, and turned to Kakashi. You're right, Kakashi, this was a good idea. It didn't escape Naruto's notice that she dropped the sensei after his name. Even Hinata covertly raised her eyebrows at the pair. But if Kakashi thought it strange, he didn't say anything. In fact, at the end of their meal he stood up and said, "Thanks again for treating us. I forgot my wallet, so you saved Sakura from having to cover me yet again." Once again, no, Chan, after the name. He'd heard they were apartment neighbors and Tsunade had even confided that Kakashi-sensei was first on the scene when Sakura finally broke the second genjutsu, but he felt like he'd blinked and missed a whole lot of development in their relations if they were using each other's first names like that. Hinata caught his eye and gave a delicate shrug as if to say, "Yes, it's weird, but I'm not about to say anything." Before you go, Naruto grabbed Sakura's elbow. "Have you thought about when you might visit Sasuke? I think it'd be good for both of you. But only when you're ready," Hinata added. The Sakura he knew would have visited him every day, unprompted. She would have fought to be the one who oversaw his trial week, too. But in hindsight, Naruto couldn't fault Hinata's efforts in the last 7 days. She and Sasuke were both clan elites, and she used the same respectful register when speaking to him that she would use with any social peer. It surprised Naruto, and he was pretty sure it had surprised Sasuke too. Sasuke, for his part, was determined to show Hinata no particular respect based on her status alone, but Hinata revealed later that they did, in fact, know one another decently well in childhood. She never got frustrated with Sasuke's rough contempt, always listened to his dangerous opinions on villages, clans, and shinobi culture with genuine interest, and was generally everything Sakura wouldn't have been in that situation. And Sakura never visited, and Sasuke never asked. It was a complicated sort of sadness for Naruto, who foresaw the death of their relations long before he learned that for Sakura at least, it had died of old age. But they were still a team, and Naruto had to know that still meant something to Sakura. If not, then the unfamiliar girl before him was indeed a stranger. Sakura paused for a moment, before gently pulling her elbow from his grasp. "Would it surprise you to learn I was scared to see him?" "Yes," he said frankly, and her lips twisted in a smile he knew well. "You're not scared of anything." Sakura was passionate, volatile, loving, and occasionally prone to tears, but she hadn't been scared since they were Genin and Sasuke left home without her. "That was the old me," she said, and the smile was gone. "The new me yelled at a stranger yesterday because he said the infinite Tsukuyomi was just more shinobi nonsense, like making a world where we didn't have to kill each other wasn't the entire point of what Madara and Obito were trying to achieve, and even if it was wrong, I don't want to hear a civilian criticizing it because they don't know, and even if death touches the edges of their lives they'll never know what a world without death means to people like us. The new me has to wake up my neighbor in the middle of the night because I'm still having trouble separating my nightmares from reality." Sakura's voice was getting louder, her body more tense. Naruto didn't know how to make it stop without making it worse. People were starting to stare at her, and it was only when Kakashi placed a hand on her shoulder that she seemed to realize what she was doing. She closed her eyes for the space of a breath, freeing Naruto from her attention long enough to take a breath of his own. "The new me is so unbelievably scared, Naruto. I'm sorry," he said, because he upset her, and because he knew he wasn't the person she really needed right now. "Are we okay?" Perhaps he was still pushing too much, but he hated the idea that she might be scared of him too. To his relief, Sakura's face softened. Of course. She hugged him briefly, before she and Kakashi disappeared into the night. 2 months later. "How have you been sleeping lately?" Yoko peered at Sakura from over the top of her half-moon spectacles. In her first counseling session, Sakura had felt exposed by that gaze. Now, she knew there was no judgment in those eyes. "I still get the occasional bad dream, but I've started sleeping through the night instead of breaking into Kakashi's house and asking him weird questions." She laughed self-consciously. "That's great. When we last spoke, Yoko's eyes flicked to the open notebook resting in her lap. You said that you were worried about leaning on Kakashi-san too much. It sounds like you've been working on that. He's still my best friend. Hero. Reason for getting up in the morning. Person. But now that my other friends understand everything, it's easier to talk to them without feeling like they're judging me. Yoko smiled, and jotted something down in her usual coded scrawl. Speaking of talking to people, have you gone to see Sasuke-kun yet? The leather chair suddenly felt too small. Not yet. Sakura shifted uncomfortably. It's still pretty low on my to-do list. Somewhere after, buy clothes that I don't hate, and go an entire day without forgetting I'm still a teenager. I thought it might be best to wait until the new year at this point. Yoko's expression remained neutral. New Year's, then. How about your training? Last session we talked about the possibility of your returning to active duty. She reached for a stack of papers on the desk. I have the clearance forms right here if you're ready. Sakura hesitated. Physically, I'm back at my peak. Kakashi's been helping me train. But it still feels weird to think of myself as an active duty kunoichi, let alone back at Chunin level. I'd hardly know where to start. Yoko rifled through the papers, handing one to Sakura. There will be a new intake period for Junin prep classes in the new year. When they start getting too easy, you'll know it's time to take the test. There were classes for medicine, taijutsu, ninjutsu, and half a dozen different types of weapon. Sakura's gaze lingered on the last class, genjutsu. You're right. I can't put this off forever. Kakashi stood in the middle of training ground 3, trying to calm his breathing and focus on the landscape. Between Sakura's announcement that she would be returning to active duty and Tsunade's ominous request that he come see her, as soon as convenient, his thoughts were swirling faster than the flurries of snow in the air. He heard a telltale crunch from his 6 o'clock, and threw himself to the side just in time. A barrage of snowballs passed over his head, but they were just a distraction. The real threat came from below, in the form of a boot aimed at his kidney. He twisted to the side, grabbing Sakura's foot and using its momentum to drag the rest of her out of the snowbank she had concealed herself in. She sprang up easily, white powder falling from her hair as she broke from his grasp and moved in for a left hook. Her right flank was left open, and Kakashi went for the hit a split second before he realized he'd fallen for a feint. His fist soared straight past her body, and with a cry of triumph Sakura grabbed the back of his neck and pushed him face first into the snow. I win, she crowed, before stepping back and allowing him to get free. Good job with the feint, Kakashi told her. You took the problems I'd pointed out in our last match and used them to trick me. They made the seal of reconciliation and began brushing themselves off. Hey Kakashi. Sakura's former glee had turned to something more contemplative. Can I ask a favor? Kakashi edged his head to the side. What's up? Do you want to go again? Because I think I'd need to warm up a bit first. He rubbed his hands together for emphasis. Sakura shook her head. Not another sparring match. I was actually hoping we could go over some genjutsu. Kakashi could sense the hesitation in her voice. Is this about your return to active duty? She nodded. That, and the classes I'll be starting after New Year's. I know there's a good chance I'll have to break out of a genjutsu again, and, well, she blushed, glancing at him through her lashes, I wanted the first time to be with someone I trusted. Kakashi hoped the flush of color on his own cheeks could be chalked up to the cold and not his Jiraiya-corrupted mind reacting to her particular choice of words. He coughed delicately. You want me to give you genjutsu training? I just want to do it a few times with you before I start the classes. It was a bad idea. Kakashi didn't want to get into Sakura's head and he certainly didn't want her in his. But she was trusting him, and he owed her that trust. All right. He sighed, and Sakura's face lit up. Thanks. Just think, soon we'll both be Junin. Kakashi made a noncommittal noise. Something about the way that sounded coming out of Sakura's mouth gave him a pinch of anxiety. Do you want to start now? She nodded. I'm ready. You might want to start sitting down for this. It'll be easier on you if you collapse. Sakura scoffed, moving into a horse stance. I'm not gonna collapse over a basic genjutsu. Besides, she kicked at the snow, I'm wet enough as it is. I'm going to use a genjutsu that will make you think you're under attack, he told her. You must stay focused on the fact that it's just an illusion. Try not to react at all unless it's to release yourself. Wait. Sakura threw up her hands. Before you start, could you remove your mask? Wordlessly, he tugged the fabric down to his neck. Sakura gazed at his bare face for a moment, then nodded. Okay. He formed the seals quickly, throwing Sakura into an illusion that would feel like being dragged under a quicksand jutsu. She gasped, staggering in place. With a soft whumph, her body fell backwards onto the snow, and Kakashi dropped the illusion. She didn't immediately rise, and Kakashi stepped forward guiltily. I thought it might have been a little too much, he began, but it's easier to train against something that promotes a strong physical reaction, like being smothered. Sakura's lips parted, but no sound came out. Shit. The snow crunched under Kakashi's feet as he raced to her side, lifting her out of the snow and inspecting her. She gazed up at him, a dazed expression on her face. Are you all right? He asked, voice strained with the latent tension of finding himself back in this position. It hadn't even been that strong a genjutsu. To his surprise, Sakura giggled. He frowned, waiting for her to reveal it was all a fake out. What's so funny? He asked, and Sakura shook her head. Don't know. The snow is pretty soft, so hopefully we can rule out concussion. Kakashi used his free hand to gently feel the back of her head. Does that hurt? Sakura leaned into his touch, gazing up at him with a lopsided smile. You're very handsome, you know that. There was no hiding his blush this time, which prompted another bout of giggles from Sakura. What's gotten into you? He muttered, intercepting her hand as it reached out to touch his face. Dunno. She grinned through chattering teeth. He lifted her up off the cold snow. Do you think you can use a diagnostic jutsu on yourself? Sakura rolled her eyes. Of course I can, because I'm awesome at that. She paused, appearing to concentrate as she clung unsteadily to his arm. Oh. What is it? I've been poisoned. By what? Kakashi cried, and Sakura cackled. Oxygen. Oxygen. Yep. My mind thought it was drowning again, so it oxygenated my blood. But I wasn't, so bam, double the oxygen. Kakashi raked his hands through his hair. I shouldn't have started with asphyxiation, he said, voice strained. I'm sorry Sakura, that was cruel of me. No, it was useful, she mumbled through lips that had begun to twitch. Turns out my body's fail-safes are actually super exploitable. Listen, can you take me to hospital? We have to fix this before I pass out or have a seizure, and right now I'm kind of, she gestured to herself with a giggle. Right, of course. He couldn't remember the last time Sakura had needed to go to the hospital. Her body was so capable of healing itself that it never seemed necessary. Sweeping her up into his arms, he transported her via teleportation jutsu for the second time in as many months. The desk staff at Konoha Hospital seemed far less perturbed than the situation seemed to call for, in Kakashi's opinion. Granted, he had caused quite the scene, striding in with Sakura giggling in his arms. He'd called for a medic immediately, but the man and woman at the front desk simply raised their brows. What happened to Sakura-san? The woman pointed at the figure in his arms. Sakura waved back drunkenly, and Kakashi had to adjust his grip to keep her from falling. The male desk attendant laughed, and Kakashi glared at him. She's got oxygen poisoning. She said she might pass out or have a seizure if it wasn't treated quickly. Half the hospital waiting room was watching them now, a pair of female orderlies whispering something behind their hands. He wanted to scream at them all for being so slow to react. The desk attendants glanced at one another. Fetch a gurney, the woman told the man, before coming around the side of the desk to inspect Sakura. I guess that explains why she couldn't just do it herself, the woman mused, trying to reach for Sakura's pulse while Sakura batted her away with shaking hands. She's in no state to mold chakra. Sakura giggled brokenly, before closing her eyes and curling into Kakashi's shoulder. Tired, she muttered. The gurney arrived. Kakashi lowered Sakura onto it, and the male attendant wheeled her towards the cream double doors at the end of the room. Kakashi went to follow, but the female attendant threw her arm out to stop him just as Sakura disappeared through the doors and out of sight. He glared down at the woman. What? Are you family? He gaped down at her. How many years have I been avoiding this place, and now the one time I actually want to go in, you won't let me. She shrugged. Rules are rules. Now what is your relations to the patient? I'm her teacher. Is that good enough? The woman shook her head. Listen, pretty boy, I don't care if you're the Hokage. If you're not her father, brother or husband, then you can come back during visiting hours. The whispering orderlies were still staring, and he overheard one of them sigh. That was like something out of a movie. Fists clenched, Kakashi turned and stalked back out of the hospital. It was only when a blast of frigid winter air hit his face that he realized his mask was still down. It was just getting dark by the time Sakura got back from the hospital. She knocked on Kakashi's door before reaching for the handle to let herself in like normal, but for the first time since they had become neighbors, the handle wouldn't budge. After several seconds of waiting in the corridor, the door finally clicked open. She would have walked in and headed for her usual place on Kakashi's couch, but Kakashi himself stood in the entrance, blocking her path. His mask was up and it was hard to read his expression in the dim light. Hey, she said, feeling off balance. I just came back from the hospital. I wanted to let you know I'm fine now, seeing as you didn't come back to visit me. She tried and failed to keep the reproach from her voice. That was fast, Kakashi remarked. I thought they'd keep you overnight at least. Yeah, she rubbed the short hair at the back of her head. It was a simple enough fix, I was just too loopy to do it myself. Listen, she began, I'm sorry about them kicking you out like that. Kaori likes to tease, but she's harmless really. It's fine, Kakashi said. I had some stuff to take care of anyway. Oh, Sakura glanced pointedly at the sliver of apartment that was visible through the door, and Kakashi finally seemed to take the hint. Yeah, Tsunade mentioned that she wanted to see me about something, he said as he pushed the door further open and stepped back to let her in. Sakura stepped inside, but instead of flopping onto the couch or raiding his fridge, she remained standing, hovering in the living room. What did she want? Among other things, Team Kakashi has a B-rank mission tomorrow. Recon at an outpost that's gone dark. Wow, Sakura said, less than a day of active duty and I've already got a mission. Actually, I told Tsunade you might not be up to it. You what? Sakura spluttered. Why? Because you were just in the hospital. Kakashi raised his brow. Most people can't get cleared for missions so soon after being discharged. Never stopped you before. He gave a short exhale of laughter. Fine, fine. But don't forget, his masked face grew serious, this means we're officially back to being captain and subordinate. We can't be friends anymore. An all too familiar feeling of rejection squeezed at Sakura's heart. We're still friends, Kakashi assured her, taking a hasty step forward. They looked at one another, standing in his living room, and Sakura could tell he was picking up on the sudden awkwardness between them. It's just complicated, isn't it? He said softly. Not to me. Sakura closed the distance between them. She had meant it as a gesture of defiance, a defense of their current friends against those who only knew their past history. But now that she was actually standing so close, All she could think about was the Kakashi in her dream asking if she could be happy with him. Her gaze slid off the real Kakashi and landed on the door behind him. Well, if we have a mission tomorrow, then I guess I should probably turn in. Good idea, Kakashi said, and Sakura couldn't hear anything in his voice that suggested he had intuited her thoughts. We're meeting at 0700 at the AN gates. Naruto and Sai already know. See you then, Captain. Akayama Outpost overlooked in a remote valley to the country's north. During the spring thaws, the valley was considered a tactical asset. In late December, it was a virtual dead zone, but a lack of regular reports was still cause for concern. Kakashi scaled the outer wall of the cube-shaped building, dodging glass-like patches of ice as best he could. Sai would be flying in from the other side, and Naruto and Sakura had walked in the front door. Even with gloves, his fingers were stiff as he finally found a window to heave himself through. He and Sai were meant to be gaining intel by stealth, while Sakura and Naruto opted for old-fashioned charm, and right now he knew which he'd rather be doing. He moved through darkened rooms as quickly and quietly as possible, searching for any evidence that something was amiss. The sound of laughter from a few levels down caught his ears, and he edged closer to the balcony that looked down on the inner courtyard. From the shadows he could see Naruto and Sakura, seated at low tables with what must have been the entire force of the outpost surrounding them. Naruto was regaling the men and women with stories from the war, occasionally pausing to ask thoughtful questions about the outpost. As for Sakura, she was seated a little ways away, and all of the ninjas surrounding her were men. A giant barrel of sake sat in the middle of their table, and Sakura lifted it like it was a thimble. With the delicacy of a geisha, she poured out 2 cups and handed one to the man sitting directly opposite her. The man was several feet taller and broader than Sakura. He reached for the cup with unsteady hands. 29, Sakura said, knocking back her drink. The large man tried to do the same, but when he moved his hand, half the sake sloshed over the side of the cup. He tried again, leaning over on his elbows. Kakashi watched in helpless fascination as the table collapsed under the man's weight and sent both man and sake flying. There was a half-second of silence before one of the other men grabbed Sakura's hand and raised it overhead. The winner! He cried, and the cheers echoed around the rafters near Kakashi's head. He should have gotten back to his own task, but he couldn't drag his eyes away from the scene below. 2 men were hoisting Sakura onto their shoulders, parading her around the room. One man's hand skated across the small of her back and Kakashi's own hand flexed involuntarily. What was he so worried about? Sakura was laughing, and it was becoming fairly clear that none of the shinobi crowding around her had gone rogue. Was he just feeling overprotective because it was Sakura's first mission back? He grit his teeth. He was meant to be re-establishing the boundaries between them before missions got more serious, or before Tsunade went public with her announcement. After that happened, their growing dependence on one another would become a liability. He needed a plan, something stronger than the current chain of command. And so it turns out they were just cold and tired. Morale was at an all-time low so soon after the war, but meeting Naruto really seemed to raise their spirits. We've got their reports for the last few weeks with us. They wrote them, even if they didn't send them. Tsunade took the scrolls from Sakura and tossed them into her tray. I'm glad it wasn't anything more sinister, but if their next report isn't timely, there will need to be consequences. We're all cold and tired. It didn't escape Sakura's notice that Tsunade's gaze had flickered to Kakashi, nor that something unspoken seemed to pass between the pair. But they had been dismissed, and Naruto was tugging on her wrist as they all left the Hokage's office. Listen, we should all go to Hatsumo tonight. He looked between Sakura, Sai and Kakashi. It's been so long since we all hung out together. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. We just trudged through several miles of snow to collect a report together. Naruto rolled his eyes, but it was clear his enthusiasm was not to be dampened. Missions don't count, and that one was boring anyway. Come on. Sai shrugged. Sure. I like visiting the shrine at night. And Sakura, you'll come, won't you? She had to laugh. Naruto's eyes were so wide that they were almost literally sparkling with emotion. Sounds like fun to me. Plus, I want to start the new year off with as much good fortune as possible. Right. Naruto nodded fervently. Kakashi. Kakashi shook his head. Sorry, I'll be busy. What? Naruto threw up his hands. What could you possibly be busy with that late at night? You wouldn't know them, Kakashi replied, and Naruto scoffed. As if, you're just making up excuses to get out of spending time with us. You can't do that once you're. Kakashi shot Naruto an uncharacteristically sharp look, and Naruto's mouth shut with an audible click. The blonde sighed. Fine. With a final wave to Sai and Sakura, he headed off in the direction of his apartment. Sai turned to Sakura. What was that about? Sakura shrugged, turning to Kakashi, or at least, where Kakashi had been a second ago. She sighed. How should I know? Nobody talks to me anymore. The first shrine visit of the new year was an important event for shinobi and civilians alike. It was a chance to cast off any latent negativity from the previous year, and stock up on fresh good fortune for the year to come. Sakura had braved the cold in her usual standard issue fatigues, but had added a red beanie and scarf from the back of her closet. Both her therapist and Ino had been encouraging her to expand her wardrobe, but she'd yet to find something that didn't make her feel dysphoric. Naruto and Sai were already waiting for her at the base of the shrine's stone steps. Sai gave his usual cat-like smile, but Naruto still seemed to be in a bad mood. Seriously, what's wrong with you? Sakura asked, punching him lightly in the arm. It's not like this is the first time Kakashi has flaked out on us, you know. She tried to sound lighthearted, but in truth her gut twisted with uncertainty and half-buried memories. They made their way up the hill upon which the shrine rested, admiring the beauty of the trees. Konoha's namesakes were blanketed in snow so thick that even with the growing crowds of shrine attendees, the world seemed muffled. With the orange glow of the lanterns lining the path, the overall effect was otherworldly. Hello. Sakura turned, and it took her a moment to recognize the woman standing behind them. Hinata was wearing full kimono, with her long hair swept up and pinned in place with a pair of silver combs. Damn, Hinata, Sakura whistled, you look just like you did on your wedding day. Hinata's brows creased in polite confusion, and it took a half-second for Sakura to realize why. I just mean, you look really nice. That's all. She tugged her scarf higher to hide her blush. Her friends knew about her dream and the toll it took on her, but she had omitted a lot of details. Oh, thank you. Hinata smiled, and turned to Naruto with a shy smile. Hello, Naruto. Naruto stared at Hinata with an expression that could only be described as startled. Sakura watched with mixed amusement and disgust as his eyes flicked down from Hinata's face and back up again. She waited for Hinata to blush or perhaps keel over, but to her surprise it was Naruto's face that suddenly burned scarlet. Are you cold, Hinata-chan? He was unzipping his jacket before Hinata could even respond, throwing it around her shoulders. Sai spoke up. Hinata-san looked so elegant before you ruined her outfit with your ugly jacket, Naruto. Naruto glared at him. Shut up, Sai. You can't pretend to care about fashion if you only wear the same thing every day. You're one to talk, orange boy. I don't mind, Hinata said quietly, tugging the jacket around herself. Thank you, Naruto, but won't you be cold now? Nah, Naruto grinned. I've got Kurama's chakra protecting me. Want to join us for Hatsu mode? Hinata gave a delicate shake of her head. I'm meeting Kiba and Shino at the shrine, but I can walk with you until then. Naruto smiled. Sure. They continued on down the path, Sai veering off to inspect a particularly gnarled tree while Hinata and Naruto forged on ahead. Sakura watched the pair with a rueful smile. As much as she had always wished for them to get together, their dream marriage hadn't been without flaws. The real Hinata didn't have to keep loving Naruto just because he was the first boy she'd noticed, and just as she herself had outgrown her love for Sasuke, maybe Hinata was growing into a woman who had other priorities. Why are you staring creepily at Naruto and Hinata? Sai had doubled back to her. She laughed. I just realized that Hinata had grown into a beautiful young woman with her whole life ahead of her, and it made me really happy. The main courtyard of the shrine was packed with twice as many stalls as usual, to meet the demand for good luck charms omamori, and paper fortunes omikuji. Despite the crowds, Sakura found it easy enough to follow the sound of Naruto's loud voice. Wanna buy an omikuji? He asked the others. If I'm destined for any more bad luck, then I want to be forewarned, at least. You know those things are bullshit, right? The group turned at the sound of a familiar voice. Shikamaru stood a few feet off to the side of the festivities, and Sakura wasn't sure what was more surprising, the fact that he was wearing full winter kimono, or the fact that Tamari was standing by his side. Hey guys, Tamari waved. Long time no see. She was wearing a black dress instead of a kimono, but she still looked regal and elegant. Sakura began to feel a little self-conscious in her fatigues. Hi Tamari. Hinata waved. What are you doing in Konoha? Freezing my ass off, Tamari grinned. And getting the world's most boring tour from this guy. She nudged Shikamaru, who grunted. You're the one who said you wanted to go to Hatsumode, he said. I tried to warn you it would be cold and dull, but you insisted. Tamari shrugged. It was worth it just to force you to wear a kimono. I live to amuse our foreign guests. Well, I'm gonna go get my fortune. Naruto turned back for the stalls. Like I said, if my luck's already run out for the new year, then I want to know now. Tamari and Shikamaru glanced at one another, before shrugging. We'll tag along. If the great Uzumaki Naruto is out of luck, then that affects us all. Sakura placed her money in the shrine's coffer before shaking one of the wooden boxes provided. After a few seconds, a thin rod fell out of the hole in the top and revealed her number, 14. She withdrew a paper fortune from the 14th draw and held it up to the lantern light to read. What did you get? Naruto craned his neck anxiously. Sakura raised her eyebrows. Great fortune. She held it up for him to see, feeling surprisingly reassured. How about you? Naruto held up his own fortune with considerably less enthusiasm. Curse. Ah, that's a shame. Sakura tried to sound sympathetic even as she tucked her own fortune carefully into her pocket. But it's like Shikamaru said, these things aren't exactly perfect. Easy for you to say, Miss Great Fortune. Naruto headed over to a nearby tree where dozens of bad fortunes had been tied to its branches. This is all Kakashi's fault, he muttered, tying his own fortune off. What? How? Sakura frowned. Because he wouldn't come out with us. No, because he's going to become the next Hokage and leave me waiting another 2 years. Naruto wailed, before clapping both hands over his mouth. He what? Naruto stared at her, eyes wide. Pretend I didn't just say that. Sakura's head was spinning. Since when? Why didn't he say anything? Why didn't Tsunade say anything? The image of Kakashi from her dream bubbled to the surface. A Kakashi with a face of stone, staring out over Konoha with tired eyes. He would hate being Hokage. Nothing is confirmed yet. Naruto glanced nervously at the passers-by. But apparently Tsunade doesn't want the title forever. She wants to spend a few more years traveling, and leave the village to the next generation. But she doesn't want to name me her successor until I'm at least 20. He grimaced. Something about making sure I know what I'm really getting myself into. That, at least, Sakura could agree with. Still, Kakashi really agreed to step up if Tsunade steps down. I don't believe. Shish. Naruto poked her in the arm as the others approached. About time, guys. He called with exaggerated cheerfulness. What did you all get? Hinata held up her fortune. Future blessing. Sai patted his front pocket. Mine said, small blessing. Shikamaru and Tamari both grinned and held out matching slips of paper. Middle blessings. For us. Naruto scowled, his conversation with Sakura seemingly forgotten. You said you didn't even believe in them, Shikamaru. Shikamaru shrugged. I don't, but it was worth the 100 yen just to see the look on your face. I take it your fortunes weren't great. He glanced meaningfully at the tree. Oh look, it's Kurenai-sensei. Hinata pointed off toward a stall for good luck charms. I bet she's returning the pregnancy charm we got her last year. It was common practice for people to dispose of their old charms before replacing them with new, fresh ones. Kurenai was standing in line with Anko, Guy, and a handful of other Junin Sakura recognized. In such a group, Kakashi's absence was more notable than ever. She watched as both Hinata and Shikamaru made a beeline for the woman, leaving the others to follow. Hello sensei, Hinata said. Have you seen Kiba and Shino by any chance? Where's Akira? Shikamaru asked, and the baby's name still gave Sakura a little jolt of vertigo. Kurenai smiled at the group. Hello, everyone. I haven't seen the boys yet, and Akira is home with the babysitter. It's too cold out here for him. I could have looked after him, Shikamaru protested. You could have asked me. And have you miss out on Hatsumode? Kurenai's scarlet eyes filled with mischief. Besides, you look so handsome in your kimono. Shikamaru blushed, and Tamari laughed. Kurenai turned to her. Ah, Tamari-san, I didn't realize you were in Konoha. Did you come here with Shikamaru-kun? Now it was Tamari's turn to blush. Technically. Sakura's eyes drifted away from the group. She hadn't needed an entire dream to tell her that Shikamaru and Tamari were an item. That was old news even before the war started, as much as they tried to keep it a secret. She spotted another charm stall, one with a shorter line, and peeled off to take a look. Classes were starting up the day after tomorrow, and it wouldn't hurt to get a success in studies amulet. She eyed the other amulets. Whatever his reason for missing out, it seemed a shame that Kakashi couldn't be there. It was absurd, especially because she had only seen him earlier that day, but she found herself missing his company. Perhaps a charm would help remind him that no matter what he was facing, Sakura would be there for him just as he had been for her. There were amulets for luck, love and safe travels. There were even amulets made especially for shinobi, though these were usually more popular with their civilian friends. Sakura was about to purchase a green charm with a gold arrow that was supposed to be for career success. If Naruto was to be believed, Kakashi may need it in the coming year, but then she spied something truly perfect hidden at the back. This one, please. She held out the charm and her money. Excellent choice, the vendor smiled. Is it for you? No, it's for a friend. Lucky friend. It's the simplest messages that always have the most power, don't you agree? Sakura rubbed a thumb over the silky pouch of the amulet. I hope so. There was something hanging from Kakashi's front door when he stepped outside on the first day of the new year. It was small and red, and when he carefully untied it from his doorknob he could see the word, happiness, was embroidered on the front in silver thread. Someone had left him an omamori. He glanced at his neighbor's door. Sakura was probably still inside, sleeping in after a late night at the shrine. Part of him wanted to barge in through her door and wake her up to thank her, the same way she had occasionally surprised him when she was first adjusting to reality. But he knew he never would. Instead, he pressed the charm to his masked lips before slipping it into his pocket. Thank you, he murmured. And I'm sorry. You deserve a better friend than me. Sakura fidgeted with the success in studies charm hanging from her bag. Her first Junin exam preparatory class was beginner's sword, and though she had always admired the elegant simplicity of such a weapon, she had barely handled one before. Anime and manga. Add on her worries about Kakashi's sudden absence from her daily routine, and she was surprised she wasn't physically shaking. True, the happiness charm had disappeared from his door, but she hadn't seen so much of a glimpse of the man himself in the last few days. Hey, a sandy-haired boy smiled at her, hanging his bag off the hook beside hers. Beginner's sword. Yeah, me too. I guess we'll be classmates. I'm Kenta, by the way. More students filed in, dropping off their bags and heading further into the dojo. They're all so young, Sakura murmured, biting her lip. I doubt they're much younger than you. Kenta appraised her. Some of them might even be older, actually. Sakura chuckled. Right. Sorry, I keep forgetting. Leaving the boy to ponder that statement, she moved to stand on the mats with the other students. The teacher appeared to be running late, but when he or she did arrive, Sakura wanted to look ready. The door at the far end of the dojo opened with an ominous creak. The students turned their heads in unison, like a herd of prey animals reacting to a nearby predator. In the doorway stood their new sword teacher. Good morning, class, Kakashi said, stepping up to the edge of the mats. My name is Hitaki Kakashi and I will be your teacher for this term. Sakura might have laughed if she weren't so baffled. Was the universe having a joke at her expense? Her step forward had sent her 2 steps back, and she found herself once more as Kakashi's student. She tried to catch his eye, but his gaze seemed to touch everyone in the class but her. As this is a beginner's class, we will be using blunted practice katana until you're ready for the real thing. You will find them hanging at the back of the room, along with bugu armor. He gestured. For a second nobody moved, but then as one the group began to surge toward the racks of weapons. Sakura tried not to get jostled or stabbed by her peers, grabbing a sword, helmet, plate and gloves and quickly withdrawing back to the mats. She hefted the blade in her hands. It was heavier than she expected. This sword is known as a wakizashi, a shorter version of the standard katana which can be wielded one-handed. Kakashi watched the class with his hands behind his back. Form up into pairs, facing one another at either end of the mats. You never mentioned you'd be teaching again, Sakura said, when he finally reached her. Kakashi didn't even look up from examining her stance. Tighten your grip, he told her, before moving on. Sakura frowned at his back. The teacher's a bit of a hard ass, huh? Kenta, the boy from earlier, waggled his eyebrows. But don't worry, he probably knows his stuff. He's one of the most powerful shinobi in the village, or at least he was when he still had a Sharingan. He still is, Sakura said, stiffening. Quiet down everyone, Kakashi glared at the group. The second half of the class will be dedicated to sparring. If, at any time, you hear me say the word, halt, then you must stop immediately. Anime and manga, Sakura bowed to Kenta, before moving into the primary guard stance. The sword still felt awkward in her hand, but she managed to raise it for a strike to her opponent's helmet. Kenta parried, and though Sakura could feel that hers was the superior strength, the clash of their blades still made her arm tingle. As if sensing her hesitation, the boy went for a strike to her sword arm. Sakura twisted her wrist to catch him at the last moment, but it wasn't enough to stop his momentum. Instead, both her sword and his twisted back toward her. Halt! Sakura froze, her own sword pressing against the throat protector attached to her helmet. Kenta backed off, and with the pressure of his sword gone, Sakura was able to take a tentative breath. All of the other pairs had paused and backed apart, and Kakashi strode between them as if walking through a guard of honor. He came to a halt in front of Sakura. Show me your primary guard stance. She could see the others watching her from behind Kakashi's back. Sakura raised her sword, trying to read Kakashi's masked face. Quick as lightning, Kakashi raised his own wakizashi and brought it crashing against Sakura's. She watched with dismay as the sword was knocked flying from her hand. Kenta took a step back as it clattered onto the mat near his feet. Your grip is far too loose, Kakashi reprimanded her. You hold the sword like you're afraid of it. Face burning, Sakura bent down to retrieve her weapon. I didn't say you could pick it up. Her outstretched hand balled into a fist, and she looked up at Kakashi. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do, sensei? Kakashi corrected her, and Sakura grit her teeth. He picked up her wakizashi in his free hand and nodded to the racks on the wall. I think a bakken would better suit your level. A wooden sword, Sakura screeched, and some of the other students exchanged significant looks. It wouldn't last a second against the others. Kakashi's expression remained neutral. We have plenty of backups. You can have a proper sword when you prove you can handle it. Continue. He turned back to the front of the room, the others jumping back out of his path. Anime and manga. Sakura glared at the back of his head for a moment longer, before fetching a wooden sword from the racks. Wow. Her partner gave a low whistle. That was harsh. You okay? Let's just do this, Sakura ground out, raising her bakken. It felt like a stick compared to the boy's steel weapon. The sooner this class ends, the better. What the hell was that all about? Sakura glared at Kakashi. She had practically chased him down after the class had ended, cornering him in a quiet part of the dojo. I went through 3 swords in as many minutes. Sorry. He glanced back down the empty corridor. I just wanted to make sure nobody suspected me of favoring you because of our history. Well, mission accomplished, Sakura scoffed. And then some. That was completely humiliating, Kakashi. I thought we were friends. Once again Kakashi gave her an evasive look, and once again her stomach clenched with anxiety. Not in there. In there. I'm your teacher again. How did you end up teaching beginner's sword, anyway? It's not like I planned it or anything, he said quickly. But Tsunade thought it would be good for my public image if I got back into teaching. I don't have time for a whole new genin team, but this is easy enough to juggle with my other duties. And why do you need to elevate your public image all of a sudden? Sakura asked. She knew why, of course, but she wanted Kakashi to say it. Oh, a multitude of reasons, Kakashi shrugged. Between the chronic genin failing and the Ika Ika novels, I'm not exactly Mr. Popular. Kakashi. What? I know you've been named as Tsunade's successor. Why didn't you tell me? Kakashi rubbed his masked face as if tired. I haven't really had the opportunity. I live 6 feet away from you. You said that pretty much the same thing happened in your dream, Kakashi added. I thought it might be weird. The only weird thing around here is you, Kakashi, she poked him in the chest. We went from seeing each other every day to barely talking. She took a step back, crossing her arms in an instinctive gesture of self-preservation. Did you think I wouldn't need you now that I'm starting to feel a little better? Because I do. Seconds passed in silence. Kakashi stared at the wall behind her like he was just waiting for her to finish and leave him alone, like she was any other annoying student that had cornered her teacher to complain about a class. Not too long ago, that's exactly what she would have been in his eyes. How much had she really grown up since then? She turned and marched off, biting down on the 1,000 stupid things that would only make the moment worse. It would be nice if she could laugh off all her vulnerabilities with an airy, congratulations on the big promotion. And go back to whatever weird little normal she'd found in him, but if she opened her mouth she knew she was more likely to scream. We've had like 5 classes since then and he's still got me using a wooden sword. He must know that the second I get live steel I'm going to use it to run him through. Ino looked up from the rack of clothes she was currently inspecting. Sakura was in the changing room nearby, her voice occasionally becoming muffled as she tried on different outfits. Is this why you invited me out today? Just to talk about Kakashi? No, the answer was too quick and guilty to be entirely convincing. Ino rolled her eyes at the opaque curtain. Don't get me wrong, forehead, I'm glad you're finally getting serious about updating your wardrobe, but I can't help but feel like you're only hanging out with me because you're avoiding him. Not true. The curtain yanked back violently, and Sakura leapt at her. Her hands were warm against Ino's bare shoulders, her green eyes full of genuine love as they stared into Ino's. She was wearing a short dress with a dangerously low cut. Ino had been half joking when she'd pressed it into Sakura's arms and told her to try it on, but there was nothing funny about the way her shy little childhood crush looked in that moment. Ino took a step back for her own sake. Relax, I'm just teasing you. She flicked her hair over her shoulder, a nervous habit Ibiki was currently trying to beat out of her. It was a tell, and tells were liabilities. Now give me a spin. Sakura twirled self-consciously. The fabric was a green so dark it was almost black, and hugged her figure splendidly. Ino gave her a thumbs up. It's perfect. It's impractical, Sakura argued. For a mission, sure. For a night out with your best friend. I refer you to my original statement. The girls needed a night off, damn it. In the end Sakura bought the dress, along with a bottle green jacket, 2 pairs of dove gray pants, 3 sleeveless black shirts and a pair of sturdy black boots. There was still no splash of her old red, but Ino had to admit that the more elegant style suited her well. Now they sat at a cafe, sipping hot tea and watching passers-by through the large windows. Sakura had also ordered herself an anmitsu, despite it being the dead of winter. Do you want to go with me? Sakura spoke up, breaking the silence. To the Junin classes, I mean. I bet you could catch up easily enough. Ino briefly considered, before shaking her head. Sorry, but I'm way too busy shadowing Ibiki. Interrogation is nothing like communications. I've never used my bloodline limit for something so dark. She tried to put on a brave face, but Sakura's grimace told her she had failed. Anime and manga. Sorry, Ino. I just realized I've been dominating a lot of our conversations recently. I should have asked about you way sooner than this. It's fine. Feeling bold, she stole a bite of Sakura's sweet dessert off the end of her spoon. Yep, it was completely wrong for the season. Your weird problems are a welcome distraction from my mundane ones. Like my father's death. Seriously though, I want to reconnect properly with everyone. Sakura got another spoonful, popping it into her own mouth without any hesitation. She probably doesn't even think of it as an indirect kiss when it's with another girl. So, Sakura dragged the syllable out far too long. Ino was immediately suspicious. Have you been seeing anyone recently? There it is. Konoha isn't exactly full of beautiful women who are attracted to other beautiful women, you know. She sighed. Or if they are, they must be hiding, because I don't know any of them. Nonsense. What about? Sakura paused, staring up at the ceiling. I actually have no idea who's gay or not, she confessed. But surely you do. Ino made a non-committal noise. Sometimes, yeah, but it's not like I have a dowsing rod for fellow gay people or anything. Are Izumo and Kotetsu gay? I always wondered. Did you just hear what I said? Yes, but I also remember you saying that I should try and open my third eye about people's or whatever. I'm not making random guesses, I've observed people. Sakura grinned. How about Yamato Taiko? Ino threw a napkin at her. You're hopeless, you know that. Also, those are all men. Tell me when your third eye finds another lesbian. Is Kakashi gay? Sakura's voice was so carefully casual it was almost funny. It also hurt less than expected, which was a welcome relief. She had missed talking with Sakura like this, even if it was about men. No, he's straight. Or at the very least, he's attracted to women, she added, feeling her cheeks heat slightly. Sakura leaned forward. Wait, how do you know? Well, it's pretty obvious when men are taking notice of women. It is. Sakura frowned, and Ino threw a second napkin out of sheer frustration. Aren't you supposed to be 30? Are you seriously telling me you've never noticed when a man? Ino trailed off before glancing meaningfully at Sakura's chest. Sakura gasped. Oh my god, Kakashi looked at your chest. He was way more subtle about it than that, but yes. Honestly, I don't even think guys are aware that they do it half the time. He's never looked at my chest, Sakura remarked, and Ino grinned. You almost sound disappointed. No, shut up. Sakura suddenly became very focused on her anmitsu. I'm just flabbergasted that it's apparently such a common occurrence for you. If a man stared at my chest like that, I'd probably murder him. Maybe that's why they don't, Ino laughed. Or maybe it's because there's nothing to see. Pig. Or maybe it's because you've only had eyes for Sasuke-kun for the last however many years. Anatomy. Sakura's eyebrows knitted together. Well, he's a guy, and he hasn't done it either. Ino's head snapped up so quickly that she felt something click. For a certified genius like Sakura, she sure could be dense when it came to the Uchiha. Ino had held her tongue and played her part, but it seemed her years of suffering in silence might finally be at an end. Sakura shrugged. Well, that's Sasuke-kun for you, I guess. He'd probably say it was a sign of weakness or something like that. Hey, enough with the napkins. The florist door gave a gentle chime as Kakashi walked through, alerting the owners to the presence of a customer. The young clan leader was manning the counter today. She looked up from the book she was reading and gave him a curious smile. Kakashi-sensei. As she strode around the counter, she grabbed a bucket of flowers shaped like a cluster of delicate purple stars. I recommend the purple hyacinth if these are for Sakura. She knows flower language almost as well as I do. Kakashi, who did not, edged his head to the side. What do purple hyacinths mean? Also, these aren't for Sakura. Ino's pale brows creased momentarily, before she glanced behind the counter at a calendar mounted to the wall. It's that time of year already. I'm sorry, it completely slipped my mind. I'll have your usual order ready in just a moment. Unless you'd like something a little special, now that you'll actually be giving them to him. The usual is fine, thank you. I wouldn't know what I'd want to say to him even if I did know flower language. Ino nodded and became a blur of activity, fetching and arranging sprigs of flowers that, despite his request, he was pretty sure he'd never been given before. He tried to keep out of the way as she worked, thinking about the fact that yes, this year he would actually be able to hand the bouquet directly to the birthday boy. The thought made his stomach twist. You should have brought Sakura with you, Ino said, her tone carefully business casual. Like you did in November, for Rin-san's birthday. My mother said Sakura made a beautiful arrangement of zinnias and tea roses on Obito-san's behalf. She snipped the ribbon she had tied around an elegant bouquet of purple and yellow flowers and handed it to Kakashi. Here you are. Irises and yellow roses. Give Obito-san a happy birthday from me, too. Kakashi's confusion must have shown on his face, because Ino chuckled lightly. I may be his interrogator, but we're fairly friendly. Ibiki says kindness can sometimes be more effective than fear. Not to mention the fact that Sakura would come after us if we ever hurt him. She chuckled again, as if the thought of pink-haired retribution was a fond one. Sakura said that, she didn't mention it. Yeah, she's been checking in regularly to make sure nobody's going too hard on Obito-san or Sasuke-kun. Sometimes she visits Obito herself, but I still have to accompany her just in case. Ino paused, as if waiting for Kakashi to fill the silence. When he didn't, she spoke again. As for Sasuke-kun, I think she's still working up the courage. I can't say I blame her. How do you take back your heart when the other person doesn't even know you gave it to them? Kakashi paid and left before that question stopped being rhetorical. He had been perfectly nice to Sakura whenever he happened to run into her, with the notable exception of his grueling sword classes, but he had stopped inviting her over to his apartment for dinner, and she in turn had stopped talking to him about anything deeper than the weather. Even their sparring matches had become a group event. Kakashi had started inviting their friends to join in whenever Sakura requested the practice. And she had been requesting it less and less of late. It's for the best, he thought to himself for the 1000th time. He was protecting her, because that was his role in Sakura's life. He protected her life as her teacher and her soul as her general. Soon, too soon, he would have to protect her heart as the Hokage. Purple Hyacinth. Regret, apology. Zinnias. I miss you. T-Rose. I'll remember you always. Iris. Your friends mean so much to me. Faith, hope. Yellow Roses. Friends. February 28th. Finally, spring had almost arrived. Sakura saw the mud and slush of melted snow, and her heart sang because she knew it would soon give way to green shoots and wildflowers. She was currently on her way to Hokage Tower with an armload of reports from the hospital. Her return to active duty had also meant a return to the hospital's roster. But she had asked for fewer shifts than in her old life, preferring to spread her time across many things instead of only specializing in medical jutsu. All of her Junin prep teachers, except for Kakashi, had praised her progress in their classes. Her Genjutsu teacher even noted her natural aptitude and resistance and gave her advanced exercises to try. Her old friends were friendlier than ever, and she had even made a few new friends closer to her mental age among the civilian crowds, who couldn't detect a henge disguise. Everything was going great. Who the hell are you trying to fool, huh? You can lie to everyone else, but there's no point lying to yourself. Okay. So sometimes she still woke up in tears, smothering a scream into her pillow after dreaming about things that never happened. Some dreams felt more like memories that had gotten buried or overridden by the genjutsu, bubbling to the surface of her subconscious and catching her off guard, wearing a white kimono while her mother pinned a flower in her hair. Kissing Sasuke goodbye. Sasuke kissing her pregnant belly. Pregnancy cravings. Giving birth to Sarada in a dark laboratory while Karen held her hand. Kissing Kakashi. Making love to Sasuke. Watching a black-haired baby asleep in a crib and wondering where it came from. Buying her daughter's first pair of glasses. Watching Naruto become Hokage. Watching Naruto protect the village. Watching Naruto die. Watching Hinata break down. Watching Naruto become Hokage but never leave his office. Watching Hinata adapt. Kissing Kakashi. Kissing Kakashi. Watching Kakashi train Sarada. Watching Kakashi train a silver-haired girl and wondering where she came from. Watching a black-haired woman grow up as a civilian, safe in a world that had no enemies and no longer needed child soldiers. Wondering where that woman came from. Watching Sarada leave for her first mission, remembering the fear and wonder from her own genin days and knowing this was the only life that made sense. Watching her enemies walk around the village, unfettered and unaging. Nobody was safe. Everybody was safe. Nobody would ever die, but if she didn't fear death then the dream would reset. Naruto came out of the entrance just as Sakura was entering, and she was so caught up in chasing and squashing her half-remembered dreams that she walked right into his broad chest. She clutched the reports in a death grip as a pair of hands grabbed her shoulders and held her steady. Ouch. Sorry Naruto. No problem. The boy's smile was as bright as ever. You okay? Sakura shifted the reports to one arm so that she could flex the other in a strongman pose. Takes more than that to hurt me. But I guess I need to pay more attention for other people's sake. Naruto immediately started flexing his own arms, shifting through stances like an overenthusiastic bodybuilder. Hey, don't underestimate me either. Kurama and I are basically indestructible, ya know. Oh yeah, Sakura went for a flick to the forehead, and he dropped his posturing to dodge her hand. He went for a return flick but she swatted him with the files. It was so easy to fall into this playful pattern. Everyone changed a little as time in her dream wore on, but this goofy kid in front of her would always be the realist Uzumaki Naruto. He was one of the few things that made her grateful to be back at this point in time. A clerk opened the door and the pair dropped their play fighting to let them pass. Hey, listen, Naruto said, expression sobering. I was actually about to come tell you something. Orochimaru is dead. What? The warmth of almost spring was blasted away by a foreboding chill. I can't believe it. It was good news. It even made sense. Tactical acid. Though Orochimaru might have been, that only worked if he was willing to cooperate with the village like his subordinates had. If not, Konoha had Hunter Nin for a reason. It's crazy, right? After so many years of fighting that snake bastard, we can just relax, I guess. Naruto grimaced. Because, ya know, shinobi are so good at that. She gave a mirthless laugh. You can say that again. Well, now that I've passed on the message, I actually need to head to the Hyuga compound. Naruto glanced up at the sun overhead. I gave myself enough time to track you down and still be on time, but Hinata's a bit nervous, so I think I'll try to get there early. If that's okay with you. Sorry to drop big news and run. What's Hinata nervous about? This conversation was giving her Vlash. Was Naruto about to tell her he was engaged in that same breath that he said their oldest enemy was dead? Was her dream actually going to be right about something for once? Today's the day we finally talked to her clan about abolishing the caste system and combining the two branch houses. After talking to Sasuke-kun about everything the village did to control the Uchiha, and everything that happened with Neji, his eyes clouded over for a moment. We know it has to be done sooner rather than later. And definitely before Hanabi-chan comes of age. Before she was really aware she was doing it, she had wrapped Naruto in a hug made only slightly uncomfortable by the files. The boy stiffened for a second before bear hugging her back. You're amazing, Naruto. You all are. Ino was taking charge of her clan and her love life. Naruto and Hinata were taking on the most powerful clan in the village, and Sakura could barely get out of bed in the morning. Her face was pressed into his chest, and she felt rather than heard his rumble of laughter. You're amazing too, you know. She scoffed, a childishly petulant sound that was muffled in his shirt. It's true. You had to deal with a really powerful genjutsu all by yourself, and when you got out you immediately came and helped your friends defeat the most dangerous man in the world. Then you had to deal with another genjutsu, and break yourself out again. And despite all of that, you're still here. You're still tough, and kind, and brave. You're still Haruno Sakura. Sakura pulled herself from his embrace before she started crying and stained his shirt. Thanks Naruto, she whispered, and meant it. You're right. I am awesome. She grinned and he laughed again, the musical sound thawing the last piece of ice around her heart. Damn straight. And if you ever forget again, your friends are all more than willing to remind you. With a final wink, he was gone. Sakura rubbed her miraculously still dry eyes and resumed her errand. Naruto was right. She was tough, kind and brave. And it was time for her to use all three of those traits and take back her heart from Uchiha Sasuke. Sakura sat opposite the boy she had loved. She tried not to stare at him too openly, but seeing him was like seeing the ghost of Sarada. Broken dreams prickled her mind's eye, and she bit the inside of her cheek to stop herself from running out the door and never coming back. Sasuke was the first to speak. Naruto told me a bit about what happened to you. I guess that makes it easier, if I don't have to explain everything at once. She pulled each word from her mouth like bloodied teeth. That little breath of a non-answer was so quintessentially Sasuke. She used to think it was so cool of him, but now she realized that Sasuke must be feeling every bit as awkward and unsure as she was. That made it a little easier. I am sorry that I didn't come see you sooner. It's not your fault I had bad dreams. It was a pathetically weak way of describing her experiences, but the words, I dreamed I loved you, then I woke up, were still working their way up her throat. And in these dreams, we were married, right? There was no laughter, no derision, no tone at all. Just a carefully blank question. Yes. Were we happy? No. He nodded. That makes sense. I made a decision, a long time ago, about the kind of person my choices would make me. And it wasn't the kind of person who fell in love or got married. Ouch. Her inner voice whispered, but in reality she didn't feel much at all. I sort of knew that, deep down. I think it's why the dream could never settle. The more it tried to give me happiness, the more obviously fake it became. Quote. We had a child. It felt important to tell him this, to make it real for someone other than herself. Her name was Sarada. Sasuke looked down at the table. I'm sorry, Sakura. I can't say I regret all the choices I made, because I knew what the consequences would be and made them anyway. But I am sorry for hurting you, and everyone else. I do regret that I was so cruel and callous for so long. I forgive you. The words came easily, and she was surprised to find she meant them. Sasuke smiled at her. Not his wry smirk from childhood, something softer, but more genuine. You do seem different. She laughed. More mature. Yes. He didn't hesitate. But also sadder, more serious. You remind me of Itachi. Itachi? She barely remembered Sasuke's big brother, especially from the days before he was branded a traitor to the village. He had been a complicated man, by all accounts. She would have liked to know him. I'm sorry your dream hurt you so badly, Sakura-chan. She shook her head with a sad smile. It wasn't the dream. It was waking up. She waited outside Kakashi's door, nervously shifting from one foot to the other. Technically they were still fighting their strange cold war, but the thought of being alone made her want to swallow glass, and so she knocked without thinking. He appraised her for all of 2 seconds before stepping aside to let her in. So, he said, you finally did it, then? Yep. She hadn't even done that much talking with Sasuke, but her voice sounded wrung out and wrong. I would have gone with you, if you'd needed. I know. Because she did. But I think it was important that I went by myself for the first time. I owed him that. How was he? He was really cute. For what felt like the 100th time since waking up, tears began to prickle her eyes, and she allowed them to flow without shame. It felt really nostalgic, you know. He was just so little and cute, like he was when we were young. It didn't matter that they were still young, technically. It didn't matter that little and cute had never really meant innocent, not to people from their world. The Uchiha Sasuke she had loved and idealized for years was finally just a cute little boy. Warm arms wrapped themselves around her, and she leaned into them. I'm proud of you, Haruno Sakura, Kakashi murmured, so softly that it felt like a secret. Something inside her traitor heart clicked wide open at the sound of her own name falling from that man's lips. I want to do this forever. Deep down she knew that had to be the reason Kakashi was creating some distance between them, just as she knew it was a doomed feeling that would surely topple the bleeding pieces of Haruno Sakura she had managed to put back together. But for now, she would close her eyes and imagine this was possible. For now, she would let herself hope. 5th Hokage Senju Tsunade issued an official proclamation. Before the year's end, Hitaki Kakashi would replace her as Hokage during the interim period before Uzumaki Naruto comes of age. The news was received with equanimity for the most part. Kakashi had proven himself a capable leader during the war, and Tsunade made it clear that her duty as the last surviving Sannin was to resume her nomadic lifestyle. Kakashi knew the announcement was coming, of course, but he thought he would have been further along in his personal project by the time he was thrust into the public sphere. It was bad timing that the proclamation had come so soon after Sakura had visited Sasuke, because even though Kakashi wanted to keep an eye on her, he was also painfully aware that his new celebrity status would impact anyone close to him. Case in point. Sakura had invited him to Ichiraku's to celebrate his impending promotion. Naruto and Sai were planning on attending as well, but Naruto was still caught up in Hyuga business and had apparently roped Sai into helping. And so for the first half an hour it was just he and Sakura at the long bar, slurping noodles in companionable silence. Who's that girl with him? Their shinobi instincts were too well honed for either of them to give away the fact that they had overheard the feminine voice in the corner, but when he met Sakura's eyes he could tell she was listening too. I wonder if they're dating. She's not very pretty, is she? Another girl. Kakashi clenched his chopsticks, wondering if it was better to say something and potentially cause a scene, or say nothing and potentially insult Sakura. But before he could decide, Sakura snorted. Before the war, she probably would have been appalled at the notion of dating her annoying old teacher, but now she seemed more amused by his embarrassment than embarrassed herself. Oh wait, I know her. She's one of his students, the one that went crazy after the war. The laughter in Sakura's eyes died almost immediately, and she returned to her ramen with feigned focus. Now Kakashi definitely wanted to cause a scene. But then what? He'd get maybe 5 minutes of satisfaction, and then weeks of the rumor mill making life that much harder for Sakura. If it were only his own reputation on the line, that might have been a fair trade, but he hadn't worked this hard to protect her just to put her in the firing line over a pair of civilian gossips. I'm sorry, he muttered, the words feeling utterly insufficient. But Sakura met his eyes again. Don't be. I'm used to dealing with jealous fangirls. You're worth the drama, I promise. And then her smile was back. Small, meant only for him, but beautiful. Can I show you something? They were in the woods, the spring air lush with the smell of pine and freshly turned earth. They had been sparring, a rare one-on-one bout that Sakura had insisted upon for some reason. Kakashi was sweating, partly because their fight had been long and brutal, as evidenced by the broken branches and craters, and partly because Sakura was also sweating, the beads rolling down her neck and the half-moon of exposed upper back from her sleeveless top. She dumped the rest of her water bottle over her head, turning the beads into rivers. Kakashi's mouth felt suddenly dry. Kakashi. What? Had he been staring? Well, yes, but had she caught him? I said, can I show you something? Oh, right. Sorry. I spaced out. Yes, you can. Sorry. Smooth. Jackass. Okay. Watch this. She made a series of complicated seals that seemed to have neither rhyme nor reason nor end. If it was meant to be a jutsu, it was a pointlessly long cast that any enemy would interrupt long before it finished. He was about to point this out when he felt a warm hand on his back and a breath of laughter tickle his ear. Boo. The Sakura making hand signs disappeared, and he turned to see the real, flesh and blood Sakura standing at his back. You've certainly come a long way with your genjutsu. He was genuinely impressed, because he'd been watching her, rather closely for the past few minutes, and hadn't noticed the transition point. She flushed with pride. I've been working on that one for a while, hoping to catch you out. You weren't just pretending to fall for it, were you? He shook his head. Nope. You really got me. Okay, great. Then let's head back, shall we? It's getting late and I want a shower before tonight. What's tonight? Oh, just birthday drinks. Sakura grabbed her water bottle from where it still sat, half full, on the ground. It's still weird to think of myself as 18, if I'm honest, but Ino said a girl's night is well overdue and this is just a good excuse. It's your birthday. He scrambled to process this new information. Don't worry, she gave him a knowing grin. I consider this training session your present, so there's no need to panic. No need to panic, indeed. Biology. I can't believe Tsunade gave you those for your birthday. Ino crowed, picking up an orange-covered book like it might bite. Mind you, our next Hokage will probably make them required reading, so it's a good idea to start now. Oh, hush. Sakura grabbed Ika Ika Paradise out of Ino's hand and tucked it back in the bag on the table. And don't wave them around or I'll take them home. They were at one of the mixed bars in the Shinobi district. Anyone at Chunin level or higher could enter, but you still had to be over 20 to order alcohol. Hinata, the other member of their trio, raised her glass of pink aid. Should we drink a toast to the birthday girl? Sakura groaned. My birthday is the least toast-worthy thing here. Let's toast your progress with the Hyuga branches, are all the incredible things Ino's done with her clan lately. You've done some incredible things too, Sakura, Hinata said, at the same time that Ino said, no clan talk, please. What happened? Ino raked her fingers down the side of her face, staring into her aide like a drunk stares at their fifth beer. Shikamaru is officially dating Tamari. Sakura edged her head to the side. And, it means they're gonna get married before too long. Which means they're gonna start thinking about kids, which means Choji and I both have to start thinking about having kids of our own soon too. Oh, because of Ino Shikacho? Hinata asked, and Ino nodded. The clan knows I'm never gonna find a husband, but I'm still expected to find a suitable surrogate and have heirs at some point. Which is fine, I do want kids, but I thought I'd have more time, you know. The door opened, revealing a handful of familiar faces. Junin are out in full force, Ino commented, as Kurenai, Genma, Guy and Yamato made a beeline for the bar. That'll be you soon, Miss Junin in training. A half-second before the door swung shut, one last patron stepped through and joined the others at the bar. Oh, and there's Mr. Hokage in training. Sakura stared openly. She had only seen him a few hours ago, but there was a difference between sweaty training Kakashi that she'd technically known for years, and a Kakashi who had actually put on a nice-ish shirt and was presumably about to order an alcoholic beverage. The reality of their age difference hit her like a slap. She sunk a little further into the booth, tugging at the straps of the silly green dress Ino had made her buy. She felt like an adult pretending to be a child pretending to be an adult. So how do you find a surrogate? She asked Ino, forcing herself to look away from the bar. Is there like a registry or something? Yes and no, Ino said. There's actually a lot of limitations about whose genes would be suitable. For example, obviously any with a bloodline limit of their own would be right out. Makes sense. And ideally they shouldn't have brown or black hair. What? Why on earth would that matter? The Yamanaka clan have to be blondes by necessity. Blonde hair is a recessive trait, but the genes that inform hair color are linked to other traits like our bloodline limit. It means that we have to find co-parents with a hair color the same or more recessive than ours. Plus it's partially a matter of reputation. The blonde hair of the Yamanaka clan is as iconic as the black hair of the Uchiha clan. Or the red hair of the Uzumaki clan. Sakura quirked an eyebrow. Ino shrugged. Naruto's blonde hair just proves my point about how finicky genetics can be. Blondes and redheads are pretty much my only options. Sakura turned to Hinata. Do Hyuga have to jump through all these hoops too? Not with hair color, but the eye color of our partners can sometimes cause problems. A Hyuga that doesn't inherit the Byakugan is very rare, though. So you'll probably want to find someone with blue or green eyes, if possible, Sakura mused, before realizing one person who fit that description. The others seemed to realize it at the same time, because they all laughed in unison. And he's blonde too. Do you think I could borrow him? Ino said, which prompted another burst of giggles so loud that the Junin by the bar glanced over. But seriously, Sakura said, sobering, I guess you don't necessarily have to produce heirs with the person you marry. Case in point, Ino gestured to herself. But I can't imagine how stressed out I'd be if I had to consider all this stuff before I could be with the person I loved. Ino and Hinata exchanged the look of clan heirs who had been aware of their purpose since the day they were born, before turning back to Sakura. You get used to it, Hinata said, and her smile was only slightly wistful. Anyway, it's easy for you to say, with your pink hair and green eyes. Ino smirked. Your genes are so recessive that the only way you could produce a pink baby is if you married a Hitaki. Sakura's rejoinder was interrupted by a glassy clunk and the sound of muffled coughing from the bar. She glanced over to see Guy thumping Kakashi on the back with enough force to break a cinder block. Yeah, he definitely heard. The door opened to admit a brunette with brown hair, Tenten. Sakura waved to her. Over here. Scoot over, Ino. Ino scooted, pale brows raised in a silent question. They all knew Tenten, of course, but were not particularly close with the older girl. Hi guys, Tenten greeted the trio before gesturing to the bar. I'm just gonna grab a drink, you need a refill. Sounds great. Sakura answered before anyone else could respond. Maybe Hinata could give you a hand carrying them all. Ino's perplexed expression grew as the other girls left for the bar. She leaned forward. What's going on? How long have you been besties with Tenten? Sakura grinned. Okay. So I ran into Tenten at the baths the other day, and I'm pretty sure she's into girls. What? Ino stared at Sakura, then at the back of Tenten's head as she chatted with Hinata and the bartender. What makes you say that? Well, when I first got into the bath, she did the thing. She dipped her eyes down to Ino's chest to demonstrate. Ino's mouth worked silently, as if she were repeating what Sakura had just said to herself. Forehead, the thing doesn't count if you're literal in a bath. Sure it does, Sakura sniffed. She was definitely looking in a checking out kind of way, not a comparing kind of way, which means she likes girls, which means she might be a good match for you. Ino's cheeks were so red that Sakura was half expecting steam to come out her ears. Are you seriously trying to set me up with Tenten right now? Why not? She's cute, she's cool, she's an incredible kunoichi. And she doesn't have competing clan ties. Bleach her hair and she'd be perfect, right? I'm not about to make a fool of myself just because you're trying to play Cupid. She's not into girls. She is. Sakura protested, before realizing they were getting a little too loud. She is, she repeated, quieter. I bet you 5 Anmitsu from Cafe Blue that you at least have a shot with her. Ino looked murderous, and Sakura thought she might just get up and leave instead of responding. But instead she said, I don't like sweets half as much as you do, forehead. If I'm right, you need to help me at the florist for 5 days. Deal, Sakura said quickly, because the girls were returning with their drinks and Ino already looked like she wanted to renege. A little while later, it was Sakura's turn to get drinks. As the bartender worked, she kept one eye on her table, trying to read Ino and Tenten's lips and body language. How's your birthday celebration going so far? Kakashi's masked face and highly recessive, silver hair floated into her peripheral vision, as he approached the bar and signaled his drink order to another bartender. She turned away from her friends to smile at him. Great, actually. I'm getting way too involved in my friends' personal lives, which sounds bad, but in this particular instance I think I might have nailed it. She nodded toward her table, where Ino was actually laughing at something Tenten had said. She had let her guard down a lot in the last hour. Look at that and tell me there isn't chemistry there. Sure, Kakashi agreed, it looks like they're having fun. But I'm sure I don't need to warn you about the risks of meddling with other people's love lives, right? Beats thinking about my own, her inner voice muttered. Aloud, she said, tonight I learned that clan heads have to be really careful about who they marry. Something about certain genetic traits being linked in weird ways. Giving no sign that he had already overheard some of that very conversation, Kakashi nodded. That's true. Preservation of abilities is the ultimate priority of our strongest clans, even if it goes against the desires of one's heart. Is the Hitaki clan like that? Kakashi shook his head. We don't have a bloodline limit to maintain, so our choice of partners was never particularly important. But the flip side to that is that even though there are several people in Konoha and beyond who have Hitaki blood, I'm the only one left who is also a Hitaki in name. Do you ever think you'll marry, and keep the name going? No. His reply was immediate. Message received. Sakura's drinks had been ready for a little while, beads of condensation running down the sides of the glasses and onto a tray the barman had provided. She took a sip from one before taking up the tray. Well, if you ever change your mind, she said, and enjoyed the minute sharpening of Kakashi's perpetually bored expression. I'm thinking of getting into the matchmaker business. She left for her table before she could torture herself with an in-depth analysis of his reaction. Relief. Disappointment. No, it was far better to put him from her mind and focus on her friends, who actually had half a chance at happiness. A few hours later, the four friends were standing outside the bar, enjoying the fresh air and preparing to head home. Sakura had watched Ino and Tenten like a particularly unsubtle hawk the entire night, and could practically taste the sweet anmitsu in her future. "Oh Hinata, I meant to talk to you about something tonight," she lied. "Can we walk together? Don't you live at different ends of town?" Ino might have loosened up, but not enough to let Sakura get away with the most obvious play in the book. "Hinata's home is to the west and mine is to the northwest," Sakura defended. "Whereas you and Tenten both live more or less to the east, right?" She nodded in the opposite direction. "You two should walk together too. Safety in numbers. We're ninjas," Ino shouted, but Sakura had already grabbed Hinata's arm and started dragging her off into the night. "So what's up?" Hinata asked, once they had rounded a corner and disappeared from sight of the bar. Her eyes were round and innocent, waiting for Sakura to speak. Sakura stared, waiting for her brain to come up with something to say but experiencing only static. "Yeah, I got nothing." The innocent face cracked into a sly smile, which on Hinata was practically a belly laugh. "It's okay, I knew you didn't really have anything to tell me. You're almost as bad a liar as Kiba." "You got me," Sakura laughed, a little taken aback. She had a lot of false memories of adult Hinata, who always presented as a good wife, wise mother, capable kunoichi, and regal clan princess. She silently updated her mental file to include a tab on Hinata's sense of humor. It was refreshing, and a little reminiscent of Naruto. "We should hang out more often, by the way. Make some memories while we're still young, and all that." Physics. The next morning there was a knock on Sakura's front door. She opened it to find Ino standing there. "Hey, how did it go last night?" Sakura grinned. "I was just about to leave for class, so I might not have time for all the juicy details, but..." It was then that she noticed Ino's expression. "Crap. You owe me 5 days of work at the florist," Ino said, and would have left with no further explanation if Sakura hadn't grabbed her arm. "Wait, what? Tenten wasn't interested in you?" "No, forehead, Tenten wasn't interested in me. I doubt she's interested in girls at all, based on the way she reacted when I tried to." Her pale face burned red. I'm such an idiot for listening to you. I'm so sorry, Ino." Sakura gave a comforting squeeze to the arm she was still holding. "I swear, I honestly thought she'd be a good fit for you." "No," Ino glared, her deflated embarrassment suddenly replaced with sharp fury. "You thought my love life would be a fun little distraction from your own, and at the tiniest suspicion that someone else in town might have been a lesbian, you decided to push us together. Don't pretend you weren't considering our compatibility beyond that." Sakura fought the urge to glance at her clock. Sword classes was the one thing Kakashi was inexplicably always on time for, and would ream out any student who showed up later than him. He usually came to class straight from Hokage Tower, where both he and Naruto were now shadowing Tsunade, so she couldn't even listen out for him in the mornings and try to leave at the same time. "Listen, Ino, I have to go to class right now if I want to avoid Kakashi feeding me my own sword, but I promise I'll come to the florist straight after." She tilted her head so that Ino was forced to look her in the eye. "I'll work 5 weeks if that's what it takes for me to make this right. Purple hyacinths and horseshoe geraniums. Meaning. I'm sorry I'm such a fool. You're late, Haruno. Sorry, sensei." She got armored up at lightning speed, and grabbed a wooden Bakken sword without being asked. "If you have time to go out partying, you have time to get to your Junin classes without delay," Kakashi continued, and Sakura grit her teeth. Commenting on the unfairness would probably make it worse. Sorry, she repeated instead. She was saying that a lot today. Come to the front. Double. May I change swords first, sir? You may not. She bit down on her sigh of defeat. Kakashi called people to the front when he wanted to test their progress in a sparring match, summarizing their strengths and weaknesses so that the rest of the class could take note. Sakura had thus far managed to avoid being called on, mainly because her wooden sword meant that even with all the speed and technique in the world, any proper duel always ended in the same embarrassing way. She took up her stance across from Kakashi, the man who made her heart sink and soar in equal measure. The best and worst part of her day. Her annoying teacher and her closest friend. For the love of God, please let's him up just once. Begin. She sprang forward, hoping that an aggressive start might throw him off his rhythm. If she could just last a few seconds more than usual, she'd call it a moral victory. He sidestepped her wooden sword and went for a thrust to her throat. Instead of parrying with her stick of a sword, which would have been about as effective as throwing it at his head, she twisted her S so that the blow went past her, and aimed a blow of her own to his shoulder. Kakashi parried with ease, and Sakura was forced to let her sword be moved with the momentum of his even as the instinct to resist screamed at her. She was strong. One of the strongest ninjas alive. It was galling to be pushed around like this. With a snarl of frustration, the dam of her restraint broke open. She focused on the fulcrum of her bakken, the first few inches at the base where it was strongest. She focused on her chakra, on the way she could extend it out from her body and use it like a scalpel. As it turned out, it was even easier to imagine a blade when you had one in your hands. Kakashi went for a riposte to the side of her head, and this time Sakura caught it at the base of her weapon. There was a green flash as the knife of chakra simultaneously protected her wooden sword and slashed through Kakashi's steel. Almost the full length of Kakashi's blade toppled to the floor and stuck into the mat with a dull thud. Sakura stared at it. Kakashi stared at it. The entire class stared at it. What the hell was that? Kakashi sounded nonplussed. He was still holding his useless sword hilt with its scant inches of steel. The rest had been shorn off with a line so straight you could have used it as a ruler. It was a scalpel, Sakura tried to explain, but she hardly knew how she'd managed to do it. That was a chakra scalpel. Some of the class were murmuring to one another. That was a chakra scalpel. Sakura nodded mutely, and to her surprise, Kakashi laughed. That was incredible, he said, his gruff teacher persona slipping to reveal the man underneath. Did you mean to do that? Do you think you can do it again? True to her word, Sakura went straight to the flower shop after class. She wanted nothing more than to capitalize on her breakthrough, both with the sword and with Kakashi, but she was forced to part ways wondering if he'd be back to running cold by the next time they met. Ino was at the front counter, but when she saw Sakura, she removed her apron and flung it at her. I'll be out back. Try not to ruin anything. Ouch, Sakura murmured, but donned the apron and got to work without protest. 3 hours and 7 customers later, Sakura was sorting ribbons by color. Did this need to be done? Probably not, but Sakura wanted to prove she was serious about making amends. She had cleaned the windows, wiped the counters, replaced the bucket water twice, and even used her significant strength to sweep under the displays. Ino hadn't emerged from the back room yet, but the occasional sigh and sniffle let Sakura know that she was still around. The door chimed once again, and Sakura put down the ribbons and shifted into customer mode. Welcome to, oh, hey Tenten. There was a small squeak from the back room that Sakura attempted to cover with a cough. What can I help you with? Is Ino here? Tenten glanced around the store as though the blonde might leap out from behind the daisies. She's left me in charge for the day, Sakura said, not quite lying but definitely not doing anything that would encourage further punishment from Ino. Are you looking for some flowers? Huh, oh, yeah, a bouquet. Sakura had become something of a connoisseur of sleep deprivation, and the bags under Tenten's eyes were no joke. She drifted over to the flowers on display, hand hovering over the purple hyacinths on a hunch. What would you like it to say? I'm sorry. Sakura grabbed a handful. Hyacinths for apology. What else? Surprise. Tenten blushed. But like, a nice one. Bethany for surprise. Venus's looking glass for, I'm flattered. Yep, that works. And perhaps, interest. Sakura froze. Tenten's blush deepened. Something in the back room shattered on the floor. Or, is there a flower that says, I'm bi and also maybe an idiot for the way I handled things? Trillium and horseshoe geraniums. Ino burst into the room, back door banging on its hinges. And also some striped carnations and cyclamens for savagely rejecting me wouldn't be amiss. And could I purchase an olive branch to go along with it, please? Tenten gave Ino a weak smile. I was hoping I might run into you. And so that's why she freaked out. She knew she liked women, but she had no prior experience and wasn't sure she'd read the signs correctly until I was literally kissing her. Ino swirled the melted puddle of ice cream at the bottom of her bowl. Add on the fact that she was still processing a lot of, what might have been, feelings about Neji, and I'm surprised she didn't freak out more, to be honest. Sakura listened attentively to her friend, partly because she was so relieved things appeared to have ended happily, and partly because it was a welcome distraction from her own anxieties. Her anmitsu, the first of the promised 5, had been delicious as always. She was tempted to lick the bowl just to make Ino scold her. And your clan approves of her? She asked. Ino nodded. Yep. Like you said that night, she's basically a perfect candidate. It's still a bit early to formalize anything, of course. Tenten knows the baggage I come with, and accepts it, but we're just focusing on making each other happy for now. She leaned forward with a mischievous smile. Now that my love life is better than ever, I think it's fair turnaround that I meddle with yours. Sakura scoffed. Love is the furthest thing from my mind these days. Oh come on, Ino said, her smile turning into a frown. You think you've been at all subtle about your feelings for a certain man around whom every other conversation has revolved for months now. Stupid. Mind reading Ino pig. I don't know what you're talking about, she replied with as much dignity as she could muster. But, she continued, before Ino could interrupt or throw anything at her, even if that were the case, it's becoming increasingly clear that he doesn't see me the same way. When I was first recovering, he was always there for me. I guess I just confused kindness for attraction. It was a miserable confession, and long overdue. The hope fluttering in her chest had not weakened over time, and it was hard to say the words that would drive a nail through its heart. Are you sure? Ino asked. I can only speak from my own observations, but it's clear to me at least that he truly cares for you. Of course he cares, Sakura sighed. I'm his broken little student. But I'm healing. I'm reconciling the inside of me with the outside. I'm saying goodbye to my old lives and embracing the future. I wanted, the words lodged in her throat for a moment, I wanted him to be in that future. But every day that I feel a little better, he drifts a little further away. Since she'd managed to crack Kakashi's sword, she'd hoped his facade would also stay cracked. But shortly after that, the date of his ascension to Hokage was announced and the sword's classes were abruptly ended. With all of her preparatory classes now complete, Sakura was given a recommendation to take the Junin exam in the next session. Everything was once again changing, and once again those changes were dragging her further from Kakashi. Maybe you should talk to him about this. Ino suggested. I was going to ghost Tenten for the rest of my life after that kiss, and if she hadn't reached out and forced us to discuss it, I would never have known one way or another how she really felt. I can't burden him with this so close to his inauguration. Besides, it would be enough for me to be able to stay by his side. It wouldn't hurt if we never got closer, just as long as he stops pushing me further away. Now please, let's talk about something else. Tell me again about Tenten's new mission. I'm not nervous. Kakashi smiled. I didn't say you were. Sakura had ambushed him on one of the rare days he didn't need to leave the apartment, inviting herself inside and grabbing her favorite of his mugs before he had even closed the door behind her. He had half expected the visit, so just removed his mask and got out of her way. Once Sakura had made them both coffee, with the exact sugar-milk ratio that he liked, even though most assumed he was a black-as-my-soul kind of guy, and joined him in the living room, she had wasted no time in getting to the point. I'm not nervous, she repeated, taking a sip of her own black-as-my-soul coffee with 5 sugars. I'm just full of the normal, healthy amount of anticipation that anyone would expect to feel on the eve of the most important test of their life. And I happened to run out of coffee. Well, I'm glad to be of help, he said, because today it would be too cruel and too much effort to attempt his usual routine of, I'm far too busy and emotionally distant to be relied on after all, so you should move on and forget about your fool of a captain while we can still part on good terms. It would all be true soon enough, anyway. Even if all you need is coffee. I need about 1,000 more years of training and study, she grumbled, but immediately sat her mug down and made the rat sign for ending jutsu. Unless those 1,000 years are only a lie created by a time-space illusion, of course. I thought you were feeling better about all that. Oh, I am. Sakura resumed drinking as if she hadn't just double-checked reality. It's become a bit of a superstition, just to make sure nothing bad happens. She frowned at the dark surface of her coffee. I usually only do it when I catch myself missing that other place, or have a dream about it. You're allowed to miss it and think about it, Kakashi said, wishing he could reach out and hug her like he used to. But that wasn't a good idea anymore. I don't really, she said, with a too bright smile. Not all of it, and not all the time. As I said, it's just a silly little superstition, like warding off bad luck by knocking on wood. She rapped her knuckles on his cheap coffee table to demonstrate. Kakashi had an idea. Actually, he stood, if it's luck you need, then wait right here. He stepped into his bedroom, grabbing his happiness charm from where it sat on his bedside table. I'm sure you've already got one, but you can borrow mine for tomorrow and double down on your positive energy. Sakura received the charm with both of her coffee-warmed hands. I wasn't sure you'd even kept it, she said quietly. Kakashi opened his mouth to say something reassuring that neither of them would believe, but thought better of it. Instead, he gave her an apologetic smile. I'm sorry I've been a bit distant lately. Did I do something? Sakura's expression was suddenly tormented, a ghost of her worst days. He wondered how long she had been waiting to ask that. And if so, can I take it back? You didn't do anything, Kakashi assured her, heart sinking under the weight of fresh guilt. I did. She frowned. What did you do? I fell for you. I agreed to become Hokage, for one thing. You've seen the toll it takes on Tsunade. I won't have much time for my friends once I start, and I thought a gradual change might be better for everyone. You mean better for me, Sakura guessed. You were worried I was becoming too dependent on you, and would relapse if you suddenly disappeared out of my life. He nodded, wishing his mask was up. He felt too exposed around her these days, like she was seconds away from discovering all his secrets and tipping them headfirst into an even harder conversation. You've made quite a few incorrect assumptions there, Kakashi. For one thing, I'm tougher than I look. She winked. And for another, you wouldn't have to disappear out of my life at all. I do know where to find your new office, it's the big one. He laughed gently, but it sounded more like a sigh. I know. I'm sorry, you're right. Nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to change, she echoed, turning the happiness charm in her hands. The pink-haired girl stepped into the clearing, shaking rain off her bamboo umbrella like she was on a stroll through town instead of the forest of death. You must be the one the Hokage bet on to win, One of the exam supervisors ringing the campfire called out to the woman. She hate you, or what? There were 5 Chunin currently undertaking the Junin exam, roaming the forest of death for the supervisors. The 10 supervisors had decided to camp as a group for the night, but despite their numbers they carried only one set of bells between them, and nobody could progress without them. The girl laughed, stepping a little closer to the fire. Tsunade's bad luck doesn't matter when it's a sure bet. The others jeered. Does she even have a weapon on her? A Junin woman asked, and a sensory type shook his head. No metal at all except for her forehead protector and a few fasteners, he confirmed. And no other Chunin for half a click. So she wasn't the decoy. This, walking straight into the enemy camp, was her solo play for the bells. Thus far, we are not impressed. A ginger-haired Junin stood up, grabbing a double-handed axe that was taller than he was. He cracked his thick neck with an air of supreme boredom. Do you even know which of us is carrying the bells, or is that why you're trying to take us on all at once? She didn't seem fazed by the display of power. I don't know which one of you has the bells, she admitted, resting her umbrella over one shoulder. I figured I'd just pick you up and shake you until someone jingles. Well, bring it on, Pinky. You're outnumbered 10 to 1, waltzed right into camp instead of using stealth or the terrain to your advantage, and your only weapon is a shitty wooden umbrella. Tell me honestly, are you just here because the 5th and the future 6th have a soft spot? She smiled. Guess you'll find out. I'm rich. The air in the Hokage's office was festive, but hurtling headfirst toward rambunctious. Sakura had been whisked away for a celebratory drink, the second she emerged from the forest, bells in hand. That had been an hour and 4 celebratory drinks ago. It was now almost 2 in the morning and Sakura was still covered in mud, sweat, and other people's blood. Her post-fight adrenaline had long ago been replaced with the buzz of sake, which added to the strange, liminal feeling of the moment. She wanted to go home and take a shower. She wanted to keep drinking with Tsunade and Shizune until the sun came up and the Hokage had to be carried to her room. Most of all, she wanted to tell Kakashi she had passed. A toast, Tsunade declared suddenly, raising her cup. Sakura groaned good-naturedly, her pink face turning pinker. To Haruno Sakura, my incredible protege, who not only passed the Junin exam with flying colors, but also won me a lot of money by doing it on the first night. Shizune cheered, startling the sleeping Taunton in her lap. Taunton tumbled to the floor with a squeal that probably translated into a string of colorful words. Tsunade laughed heartily. On that undignified note, perhaps we should call it a night. But Sakura, come see us tomorrow. We want to discuss your future. Sakura edged her head, making the world tilt just a little too far in the process. My future. Tsunade waved her hand dismissively. Tomorrow, but after noon, or your future will be very short indeed. Sakura knocked on a door that wasn't hers. She had decided to count to 20, and if the door still hadn't opened she would go to bed and call again at a respectable hour. She got to 8 before the door swung open. Kakashi, maskless and a little wild-eyed, scanned her up and down. You okay? Yes. Perhaps this was a silly idea. She glanced down at herself and wished she'd opted for the shower instead. Kakashi exhaled slowly. Nobody shares good news after midnight, Sakura. I would have thought you'd be used to me barging in at all hours by now. To illustrate her point, she went to his kitchen and flicked on his kettle. Coffee was the last thing on her mind, but she felt on edge, somehow, and it helped to have something to do with her hands. Only when I know you're not in the middle of a very dangerous test, he said, following her. I thought someone was coming to tell me you'd been beaten to a pulp and I'd have to go identify your body. She gasped in mock protest. You really think so little of me? He paused for a second like he was thinking about it, but without his mask Sakura could see the smile he sometimes forgot to hide. She punched his arm lightly, and he chuckled. No, of course I knew you'd pass. You're Haruno Sakura, after all. Damn right, she said, but his words still warmed her. It was different, somehow, when he said he believed in her. When he said her full name. Just tell him how you feel. I came over to give you your charm back, she said instead, fishing it out of her back pocket and handing it over. Wanted to make sure you got it before your swearing-in ceremony. Thanks. But we probably could have made time to meet up before then. He smiled wryly. During daylight hours, for instance. She laughed sheepishly, hoping her face wasn't still flushed. Sorry. I was excited. It's okay, he assured her. I wanted to see you too. He did. You did. I have a present for you. Close your eyes and hold out your hands. She obeyed, trying to ignore her racing heart and how the alcohol in her system made the simple action into something strange and illicit. A few seconds passed, and then something light and silky was being draped across her outstretched palms. She opened her eyes. It was a red scarf, about the length of a forehead protector, but made of softer material and missing the village plate. I thought it might be time to reintroduce a little red to your wardrobe, Kakashi said, softly. I missed it. She ran a thumb along the grain of the satin. It's beautiful. And it was. It had clearly been bought from a civilian shop, made for people who could dream of nice things actually staying nice. Would you like help putting it in? Kakashi gestured to her hair, but Sakura shook her head. Can you put it around my neck instead? Sure. He took the scarf back and Sakura brushed her hair out of the way. It was growing in a little shaggy, especially at the back. She tried not to stare at Kakashi as he gently slid the scarf around her neck and tied a simple knot at the hollow of her throat. After a moment's consideration, he moved it slightly to the left of center. Perfect. Thanks. For some reason they were speaking so softly it was almost whispering. Perhaps because they were standing so close together. Perhaps because it was the middle of the night. Slowly, as if afraid she would break, Kakashi traced a finger along the fabric against her collarbone. Is this real? For once it was just a question and not a crisis. Yes, this was real. No illusion, she realized, had ever done him justice. She leaned in, closing the scant inches between her mouth and his. Kakashi froze, and Sakura closed her eyes, preparing to be pushed away. But to her surprise, strong arms encircled her waist, hands sliding up her arms as if to hold her against him. His lips parted ever so slightly. And then he pushed her away. You should go, he told her. His hands were still on her, but gripping her shoulders at arm's length. It dawned on her too slowly that he was rejecting her. Have I? She stopped, cleared her throat, willed herself to try again. Have I misunderstood you? Yes. He let go of her shoulders and backed up until he was pressed against the far counter. You don't want me, she had been so sure a second ago. I can't. He sounded breathless, as if they were in the middle of a sparring match. Can't. That wasn't a no, but it didn't make much sense either. Did he not understand that she was offering it to him? Why on earth not? Because I can't. He raked a hand through his hair. It was rare to see him rattled, and she still couldn't understand what had caused it. She could accept rejection, painful as it would be. But he wasn't saying no, he was saying can't. The kettle began to whistle, switching off automatically. They both ignored it. Is it because you're going to be Hokage? The role isn't a celibate one, Kakashi. I can't do this, he gestured between them, with you. She wished she were sober for this. She wished she were clean. She wished she didn't have to make him say it, but she did. She needed to hear the words or her heart would never believe it. So it's because you don't want me. It's because you're 18 years old, Sakura. He finally snapped. The scars of an old wound twisted in her gut. But I'm not. She took a step forward. I'm in my 30s. You know that. You were the only one who never doubted it before. For the first time since revealing his bare face to her, he raised his mask and hid it. You're 18, he said, posture rigid, in every way that matters. The other 13 years don't count, not for this. For this, you're 18 and I'm 31. Because that's how other people see me, she guessed. You're worried about your reputation. He laughed mirthlessly. If anything, I'm worried about yours. And for all that I know, you spent half a life in what was effectively an alternate dimension. This time last year, to me, you were barely 17 years old. And about to go to war, she argued, even as she felt him close off to her. If I wasn't too young to die, why should I be too young to love? Kakashi just shook his head. Sakura wanted to scream, and cry, and beg him to love her, even just for a night, but that would only confirm his claims. I'm 18, she acknowledged instead. And you're 31. And our friend, Hyuga Neji, is also 18. What? Kakashi narrowed his eyes at this sudden change in tack. She smiled at him, but it was cold as ashes. This time next year, I'll be 19, and you'll be 32, and Neji will still be 18. Sakura. 13 years from now, my body will match my current age. And Neji, just like everyone else we lost, will still be the same. Damn. Age. As ever. Stop this. He was using his teacher voice on her, which might have been funny if it weren't utterly galling. I'm not a child and I'm not made of glass. I'm Haruno Sakura, and I am a Junin of the Hidden Leaf. I am an adult both legally and mentally, and a weapon before anything else. I don't have time to care about something as meaningless as ages or age gaps. None of us do. You should leave. Kakashi wouldn't even look at her anymore. His eyes were squeezed shut like he was praying for the patience to deal with her. Like she was still a precocious genin with no particular talent or potential. I won't ask you again, she warned, sounding far more confident than she felt. This is your one and only chance. I'm done chasing men who won't meet me halfway. He opened his eyes, and there was nothing left in them at all. I'm sorry, Sakura-chan. Just forget tonight ever happened.